Give me a couple minutes here, because what I'd like to do is examine the false equivalency of Prokovske and Kursk. What the naysayers and the Russian propagandists are saying is that this whole Kursk business is a waste of time and a waste of resources because the Ukrainians are losing territory back at home. And they're not wrong. That is true. But these are not equivalent things. Let's take a look at them, shall we? So here's Prokovsk, and here's where the Russian army is coming from. They're about 15 kilometers from Prokovsk, which is bad because Prokovsk, the outskirts at least, are now within artillery range. And that's a problem. The city is under evacuation order. Mandatory evacuation of children begins tomorrow. Short story is, if you're in Prokovsk, it's time to go. It's time to go. That 15 kilometers, where were the Russians 2 weeks ago? And when we ask that question, it is important to remember that wars are not merely measured in weeks and days and hours and minutes and bloodthirsty seconds, but they are measured in human lives. What did it cost the Russians over those 2 weeks to go those 5 kilometers? There was a parade of hundreds of soulless, dead-eyed, hopeless Russians who had seen company after company go ahead of them and never come back, or the few that did get mowed down by Chechen barrier troops. It's an endless parade of the damned and the hopeless. And that's what the authoritarians want. That's what the Kremlin wants. It wants people to think they have no agency, that there is nothing that they can do, that they can't possibly turn their guns on their commanders and point them at Moscow. That's not an option. But rather, consign yourself to your fate and go and do what the motherland expects of you, and go and meet Jesus. And if you don't do it at the hands of a Ukrainian, there'll be a Chechen here waiting for you. That's life in the Russian army. That's as short as it is. Nasty, brutish, and short as it is. So 2 weeks to go 5 kilometers. At that pace, it will take them another 6 weeks to get to Prokovsk. Now, the situation in Kursk couldn't be more different, which is why this is a false equivalency. The Ukrainians are using Prokovsk like a trap, just like they used Avdiivka, just like they used Bakhmut, to attrit Russian forces, to fix them in place and attrit them. And the Russians just keep falling for it. They're doing it again in Prokovsk right now. All right, now let's take a look at what's happening in Kursk. Today is Monday, August 19th, and we just got word that this morning that bridge got blowed up. Now, why is it important that that bridge got blowed up? Well, let's take a look at the map. Now, if you look here over here is Sudza, and if we draw basically a straight line to the Ukrainian border there, you carve out this pocket that's about 3,000 square kilometers or so. 3,000 square kilometers. That's like 100 Avdiivkas. 100 Avdiivkas. So it makes sense, right? You'd have a 72-mile front. It'd be a straight line. And then everything behind you is Ukraine, right? This is the international border here. Here's the town of Tatkino. Now, in Tatkino today, we learned that the Ukrainians are sending troops across the border. You got strikers, America makes the striker, right? Well, or maybe the Germans. Anyway, you got strikers coming across the border here, and they're headed east. Over here is the Ukrainian army. They're headed west. We call this a pincer move. The 750 Russian soldiers and border troops and conscripts that are in here are, I guess what the technical term is, they're fucked. because they got Ukraine to the south, Ukraine to the east, Ukraine to the west, and north of them is the River Seine, and that bridge that got blown up was the last bridge over that river. Now, this is about, I want to say it's about 700 square kilometers down here south of the river. It's about a third of this whole region. And it looks like the Ukrainians are going to have this sewn up by Wednesday. Wednesday would be the 21st of August. Just about doubling the amount of territory that they have, putting them well over 2,000 square kilometers. 2,000 square kilometers in half the time it took the Russians to capture, let's be generous and say that it's a 2.5 kilometer wide front. We'll make it 3 for the ease of the math. 15 square kilometers. The Ukrainians will have captured over 2,000 square kilometers in the time it took the Russians to capture 15 square kilometers. There's no comparison. Not to mention the mind fuck that this is for Putin and the Kremlin, as is witnessed by their sheer paralysis. So far, all they've done is announce that they've called a meeting to plan the meeting to talk about the plans for addressing Kursk. That's our Russia.